Steve, off you go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this session on who will win Euro 2020 and how innovation can protect the beautiful game. My name's Steve Menery. I'm a freelance journalist and a long-time contributor to World Soccer Magazine. This session has been staged by the International Betting Integrity Association and the European Gaming and Betting Association in collaboration with EU40, the All in Diversity Project and the Sports Group of the European Parliament. We've got a great list of speakers today, including two members of the European Parliament Sports Group, Thomas Frankowski and Mark Tarabella, and Mr. Frankowski will kick off proceedings in a few moments. After that, in the first half, we'll have Lee Calverley, the Sports Integrity Lead at Entain, which has brands including Bwin, Coral and Ladbrokes, and Stephen Quigley from Flutter, who has brands including Paddy Power Betfair, and they'll take us through what bookmakers will be looking for in the tournament. Before we get going and Mr. Frankowski starts, can I just remind everyone of a few house rules, please? Can we all keep our microphones muted unless we're speaking? And can we all speak slowly? That would include me as well, as I know I can speak too quickly. Finally, there'll be a Q&A after each session. So if you can put any questions in the box at the side, and then I'll put them to the panelists in the box provided. If after the first session there isn't time, then we'll roll it over into the final session and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So thank you very much for all of you for tuning in. And here's Mr. Frankowski to kick us off proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation, and especially to the International Betting Integrity Association and the European Gaming and Betting Association for organizing today's event. As a former football player, I'm especially aware of the importance of fair play. All forms of cheating, corruption, and manipulation lower the morale of athletes and disappoint audiences. They take the passion and the faith away from the favorite team or sport. This is why policymakers should put proper regulations in place to ensure integrity and good governance in sport and is respected at all levels. In February 2017, the European Parliament adopted the resolution on an integrated approach to sport policy. In the document, the EP called on sports organizations to commit to good governance practices and promote integrity in order to eradicate all forms of corruption. It also stressed that fight match fixing requires international cooperation, urging the Council to find a solution allowing the EU and its member states to sign and ratify the Macolin Convention on the manipulation of sport competitions. The convention, prepared by the Council of Europe, was opened for signature in September 2014. Although we have reached a deadlock in the negotiations due to an opposition of Malta, we are still determined to find a way forward. In the absence of the formalized institutional framework to fight against match fixing, there are many stakeholder-led initiatives being put into place. By supporting such undertakings, we need to take sure that the actors involved in the fight against match fixing cooperate effectively and at different levels. What is more, just 2 weeks ago, the Council has approved conclusions on sport innovation. Sport innovation can help to increase citizens' participation in sport and physical activity, but is also an important tool to protect the integrity of sport and to tackle challenges such as match fixing and doping. Therefore, continuous development and improvement of innovative tools are critical to enable key stakeholders such as law enforcement authorities, betting regulators, betting operators, government agencies, and sports governing bodies to work together against match fixing in sport. For example, it should be done through the exchange of timely, secure, and reliable information. New technologies are indeed fundamental enablers, and I'm looking forward to hear from the experts today on their applications in the field of sports and sports betting integrity. This fight is like a puzzle. Each piece of it plays a key role and brings an added value as well as a different angle in tackling the problem. I am glad to welcome a panel which can explain how they are collaborating together for this common cause. Another fight will be fought soon on the soccer field for Euro 2020-21. And today we have experts to present how sport predictions and forecasts are made. If I would make any predictions on who is going to win the Euro 2020, I should probably bet on my country, Poland. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frankowski, for that introduction. We're now going to move on to Lee Calverley from Entain and Stephen Quigley from Flutter, Paddy Power Betfair, to give us an idea who they think will win and find out whether Poland's in that list. I'll hand over to you now, Lee. I know you've got a presentation that you'd like to take us through a few slides.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. I suppose to start with, myself and Stephen from Flutter, who are going to talk to you now about how bookmakers work and how we set the odds and how we, I suppose, make predictions on the tournament. We're both long-standing IBIA members, so we've been members of the International Betting Integrity Association for a long time, and we both our companies use their alert platform to I suppose assist with our integrity efforts and to alert our members to instances of suspicious betting activity. So we're both grateful for the opportunity to speak to you both to you all today. Can we move on to the first slide, please? So the first slide that I'm going to talk to you about today is just about the basics of football betting. So at the most basic level, football betting odds represent the probability of a particular event occurring. So for bookmakers to calculate a price, we take several factors into account, and that will include things like squad strength, squad selection, any notable injuries within a squad, and the form of the teams. And then we also carry out some more advanced statistical analysis and simulation. So Stephen, my partner in this presentation, will talk about some of that in more detail. But to give you an idea, bookmakers will simulate the tournament several thousand times in order to come up with predictions and prices for this tournament. So it goes without saying that there's a lot of preparation and analysis that's done to prepare the prices that we will offer on this tournament. So each, I suppose, again, at its most basic level, each football team has a different probability of winning the Euro 2020 being played in 2021 tournament. This probability is then converted into betting odds or a betting price. Before the tournament starts, there are three primary betting markets that we think attract customers' attention the most. So this is the tournament winner, so which team is going to win the tournament, and we'll discuss the relative merits of each team in further detail shortly. The second market that we find is very popular with customers is the top tournament goal scorer. So at the moment, Harry Kane from England is favourite to win that market. And then the third market is a combination of those two. So we do offer combined prices on a team to win the tournament and a top goal scorer as well. So for example, you can back England and Harry Kane to be so England to win the tournament and Harry Kane to be the top goal scorer. Now, once the tournament starts, betting on the individual matches will be more popular than the outright markets that I've discussed above. The next slide, please. So, as a betting operator, we obviously employ specialists in their field, and the Euro 2020 tournament is obviously a huge event for everyone involved with football, and that's no different to us. So we employ football traders. So our football traders are responsible for the football product that we put onto our website. So that includes the margins that we make on the football markets, I suppose the odds, and how that's displayed onto the website. So our football traders essentially create the odds and put them onto our website for customers then to bet on. Once those odds are put onto the website, our traders then manage our company's commercial and trading risk, and are able to change prices to reflect market activity. So that could be because of bets that we are taking directly, or it could be because of wider betting market activity. Our football traders are responsible for the live monitoring of all betting activity, and that is where we would work with IBIA to flag any potential concerns, but that's not something that we would be expecting to see on a tournament such as Euro 2020. And our traders are also responsible for ensuring the quick and correct settlement of betting markets. So to give you a practical example, when a game is in play during the tournament, we will not wait till the end of a match to settle bets on the first goal scorer. As soon as the first goal is scored, we will settle bets on the first goal scorer market as soon as we possibly can. Our football traders are also responsible for creating special prices on request, and they could come from customers or potentially be driven by media requests, or journalists may get in touch to request certain things. Now, to finish my bit, I think it's worth noting that all betting operators will slightly differ in the prices that they offer, and that could be due to opinions of their football traders, or just to differentiate the product slightly from a competitor. I'll now hand over to Stephen, who represents Flutter.
Thank you very much for that, Lee. That was very informative. Stephen, I'll let you take over from now on.
Yeah, if I want to go to the next slide, please. And thank you very much, Lee, for that. And thank you for joining us this morning. So before we get into the all-important prediction of who we think is going to win Euro 2020, we thought it would be important just to probably try and give some knowledge to those maybe not familiar with some of the kind of terms used in more modern day analysis. So expected goals, I think, first off, what is it and why do you think it's important? So I think some of you, particularly those based in the UK, may see on TV coverage in the BBC, see more kind of reporting on what's called expected goals. And what expected goals really tries to do, and succeeds to a degree, is trying to kind of remove the element of luck in kind of analysing who should have won a match. So to give the answer, to give a real short definition of it, it assigns a probability of a chance being converted by players during a match. So effectively, if a team is always missing chances and it goes on to lose the game, sometimes that's not reflected in the kind of analysis after the game, whereas expected goals allows this to be considered and analysed. So I think to give some real help here, Stats Perform, who are speaking later, which whom Jake is speaking later on, have kind of given me these two diagrams of probably two really good examples. So for those who remember the PSG versus Bayern Munich game back in February on the home leg, where Bayern were dominant throughout the game, but ended up kind of losing 3-2. Unfortunately, they were missing Thomas's compatriot Robert Lewandowski that day. So, and the lack of Lewandowski kind of led to Bayern missing a whole range of chances, whereas PSG with Mbappe up front scored two breakaway goals and kind of achieved an upset victory. Expected goals have become particularly sophisticated over the last couple of years as well. So it doesn't just consider where the shot was taken in terms of calculating expected goals value. It assigns kind of values on whether it was what the type of chance it was. Was it a shot or a header? Was it the player's dominant or weaker foot? Were the defenders in the way trying to block the chance? Where was the kind of give some consideration to where the goalkeeper was positioned? So it's a really impressive kind of measurement and metric. And as kind of bookmakers who are very much data driven on setting their odds, these are often very important values. On the The right-hand side includes a player called Burak Yilmaz. So anyone joining from France or Turkey will be familiar with Mr. Yilmaz. He's a 35-year-old footballer who scored 52 goals in 72 games in his last 3 seasons in Turkey. He played for the last 3 seasons. He moved to Lille last year, where he was enormously successful in his first season, scoring 15 goals. Made me more impressed by the fact that his expected goals of the season was only 9.2 goals. So he overachieved his expected goals by a factor of nearly 6, and these goals were very important in Lille, kind of leading to a surprise title. So the Burak Yilmaz case is very interesting in that it's probably, you'll see it more used in the mainstream. So players such as Burak Yilmaz, who maybe for years would have kind of gone under the radar in terms of scouts, in terms of transfer targets, like Burak Yilmaz would be a classic example of a team like Lille identifying a player who overachieves the number of goals he does score compared to the chances he has, and that's one of the reasons why players like him going to move to Lille and that they have been so successful. So, in short, for bookmakers, in calculating odds on how many goals we expect in a match, we can take a look at all the players expected to play in a game, and we can kind of make estimates based on their previous kind of probability in matches, telling us how many goals we should expect in a match. So it's a really important statistic, and it's something that is coming more into the mainstream, into mainstream TV analysis coverage these days. So, want to move on, Steve, and we'll move on to some of the key predictions and what we think is important.
Yeah, no, please do. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Lee and Stephen. Yeah, so they're both going to take us through who they fit of their predictions for the tournament, and they're not necessarily going to be the same ones. I think they make a bit.
We've actually one more slide beforehand, Lee. Steve,
sorry.
Yeah,
please carry on, Steve.
It's okay, thank you. So, in terms of kind of evaluating what we would consider most important for kind of setting price winner, there's lots of factors. We thought we should focus on maybe one or two factors in particular, just to give an idea of where our thought process goes for. So, within kind of football, kind of previous form or previous kind of competitions played, is quite an important benchmark in terms of setting odds. So, in terms of international teams, again, it's a bit different. If you have in club football, teams will play each other more often, and international teams obviously have wider squads as well. So I think probably separated, there's 3 types of matches that have become really important. That are probably most important in the kind of running up to Euro 2020. So I think firstly, these are probably friendly matches, international friendlies. These probably have less and less value as we kind of see more competitions such as the UEFA Nations League, and that we kind of felt within friendlies, more experienced players are maybe saving themselves for competitive games. They may have kind of orders and kind of club managers asking players only to play for 45 minutes in the game. So friendly matches, in terms of, if for example we have a friendly tomorrow between Italy and Germany, it's obviously an important match for many reasons. But in terms of predicting how they would go if they played later on in Euro 2020, a friendly just isn't as important as other events. If we then move on to kind of Euro qualifiers and World Cup qualifiers, these are a little more important. They're very useful if teams play each other during the qualifying campaign, later play against each other at the later stage of a tournament. Or in the instance of Spain and Sweden, who are playing, I think, in Group E, both Spain and Sweden have played Norway in the qualifiers, so we can assess we can look at the closing odds of what Spain when they played against. So we can assess the odds of Spain when they played against Norway and the odds of Sweden when they played against Norway. Norway kind of provide an important benchmark and kind of give us an idea of the relative strength of each of those two teams. I think best of all for us has been the UEFA Nations League. So the UEFA Nations League, for those who are aware, it's effectively a seeded competition which involves kind of a league table of kind of matches played between kind of teams in Europe. And what this has meant that the best teams play the best teams more often. So if we use England, for example, England have played Croatia, Spain and Belgium within the Nations League. Holland have played against, the Netherlands have played against Germany and France. So these matches are very important because there is ranking points and promotion relegation opportunities. Kind of teams have played their full teams in these matches, so these are very important. So in terms of setting odds for kind of later, kind of Euro 2020, the UEFA Nations League is our most important kind of measurement of form. Obviously, go ahead, Steve.
No, I'll say thank you very much for that. That was really good. Is there anything else that Lee or either you wanted to add after that?
No,
I think,
for me.
yeah, I think to get one more line as far as I suppose just to end on also that Euro 2020 is very interesting because of the year's delay. There are certain teams which we'll get into who have benefited from the break from the year's postponement, others who haven't. But I think as we focus on this part here, we need to look at the tournament and that. I think for those who are probably are aware of the format, one team in each group will have all their games played in their home country in the group stage. So in Group A, that's Italy, it's Denmark in B, the Netherlands in C, England in D, Spain in E, and Germany in Group F. So these are probably important factors for some of these teams. So playing home advantage is very important. If we look at Group A in particular, the teams playing Group A, so the other three teams have to travel between Rome and Baku, which is a significant travel and very different weather conditions. Have to hold two separate training camps in two very different countries. So that's going to be, we believe, a challenge for the likes of Switzerland, Turkey, and Wales. I think those you can see the groups there. We can obviously see Group F is very much the strongest group there, and as good as Hungary are, they're going to have a real challenge getting out of that group anyway. So whereas other teams may have routes, such as Group E, which involves Spain, Sweden, and Poland, and Slovakia, which, with respect to Thomas here, I think Spain and Poland aren't going to be the same strength as France, Germany, and Portugal, but there are some very different levels of groups. I think the squad depth, particularly in the season, which has had a much shorter kind of pre-season break last season, is going to be very important. So player injuries are going to be at higher risk. So we do believe kind of squad depth is going to be very important to it. I think to quite close off before we get to the end is to understand what is the impact of betting companies. So betting companies like myself and Lee, we have kind of strong markets in a number of countries, but particularly within the UK. So typically bettors within their country will, when it comes to the big tournaments, will decide to kind of bet with their heart and bet on their own countries to win. So we know that for bookmakers who are based in England, who have operations in England, they will have a significant liability if England were to win the tournament. Whereas bookmakers in Germany, France, correspondingly will have the same impact if their own country wins it. So in terms of what winner we want, we usually don't want the same nation that we kind of have betting operations in, because they're going to be very popular selections. In terms of how it goes if we look at the work of 2018 for a bookmaker perspective, where England played very well through the tournament, but then got beaten after extra time in the semi-final, that's almost the kind of result you would like as a bookmaker, because England have done very well in the tournament. The interest in the tournament has grown throughout the tournament, but they haven't won the tournament. So that's a result that does very well for betting operators. Now, we're not just patriotic. Lee as a proud Englishman, may want England to win the tournament, but commercially, that's almost the preferred result for us all.
And who would you say, Stephen? Who do you see as the favourites in the tournament? The favourites and who maybe the dark horses as well.
Yeah, certainly. So I think we'll take the last slide, Lee. Steve. We can present that with the respective odds.
Okay,
so yeah. Absolutely. So I think what we agree is, like, myself and Lee will kind of take turns going through some of these teams here. So I think I'll get the enviable task up with France. So the French team in particular is a look. It's the defending world champions. They have a great squad. The real headline news in terms of squad announcement was that Karim Benzema of Real Madrid was kind of added to the team after a 5-year exile. Benzema, on any metric, would improve probably any team in world football, and France are no exception to this. Like, Olivier Giroud is a good player, but he was scoreless in the World Cup 2018. If Benzema is starting every game of France, that couldn't be expected. This is further complemented by an incredible array of attacking options such as Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele, and Thomas Lemar. It's a very strong attacking options. I think as those watched the Champions League final last Saturday, the performance of N'Golo Kante in big games is also something that's soon to be respected. And all, Kante is an awesome player in these massive games, and they're going to be a very strong team. Like, they are priced as joint favourites for a reason. If we're to pick holes in this team, the goalkeeper position wouldn't be as secure as it was years ago, with kind of Hugo Lloris's club form not being what it was, and the other kind of goalkeeping options regarding Mandanda and Mike Mayan not being the strongest either. So the goalkeeper, if you're trying to pick holes, go through maybe the hole you can pick on.
And Lee, to take us on to the other joint favourites?
Yes. England obviously have a very good chance. We think England have some very good young players, such as Phil Foden, Mason Mount, and Jadon Sancho. We have a little bit of a concern with England's defence. Harry Maguire potentially a fitness doubt for the tournament. But as Stephen said, England play 6 of 7 games at home. England, we think, have been aided by the tournament being delayed by a year. But again, with England in big tournaments, there's a question mark, I suppose, over psychologically whether they can deal with the expectation, and they do go into the tournaments as joint favourites. So let's see if England can answer that question. On to the next team in Belgium. We think Belgium have quite a good group, quite an easy group, and they should be able to qualify from that. Belgium are the #1 ranked team in the world. They have some excellent players such as Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, who's had a great season in Serie A and scored 24 goals. And that's forgetting Eden Hazard as well, from Real Madrid, who hasn't really performed to the same level that he did at Chelsea. We expect Lukaku to get plenty of chances, particularly from Kevin De Bruyne. But again, with Belgium, we do have a little concern that their defence is ageing.
Yeah,
what about the Germans?
I'll move on to the Germans. Thank you. The Germans are very interesting. I think they're probably unexpected struggles in the 2018 World Cup have probably left things more up in the air. I think as those who are aware, I think Jogi Löw is leaving the German role after the tournament anyway. So this is a swan song as such. In the interim, they've had real kind of they've had struggles. They've had a defeat to North Macedonia in the World Cup qualifiers. They took the decision to initially kind of effectively retire Boateng, Hummels, and Neuer. Boateng, Hummels, and Muller from international football. Löw has kind of gone back on that at this point. At that point, there's still some very good attacking options for Germany. Not many teams could afford to leave out a player such as Julian Draxler from their team. But defensively is a real concern, particularly the German fullbacks in particular is an area that's probably very unexpected. So for those who saw Philipp Lahm for years kind of be the best fullback in the world, have seen Joshua Kimmich just kind of play it right back and move into midfield. The German fullbacks left now appear particularly weak and probably add to what is already a defence that isn't as strong as some of the other kind of the leaders. So the likes of Christian Gunter being called up from Freiburg was a real example of the lack of depth. A player who's a good club player, 28 years old, kind of gets a call to play for Germany and could possibly start at left back given the poor performance. So we do think there are concerns, and look, I think to go far, Manuel Neuer has to do a lot for them. I think the fact that also they're playing in the group of death, a second place finish in Group F will probably see them face England at Wembley in the second round. Now, maybe some England fans don't want that given their history of playing Germany in finals competitions, but it's a tough group for the Germans, we think, at least, and it's a very tough group.
And what about Spain and Portugal to take us a bit further?
Certainly, I'll give the Spain analysis anyway. So for Spain, I think the headline really is no Real Madrid players in the selection. The Spanish media, who are famously biased through the Real of Barcelona, the one half of that media has obviously taken this on board. I think we need to be aware that as good as Sergio Ramos is, this is a player who's 35 years old and has played one game since January. I think for those looking for inspiration from previous tournaments, you may remember Luis Aragonés didn't bring Raúl to Euro 2008, and look what happened from there. It kind of kicked off the Spanish Revolution. I think one of the big positives as well is they have included and signed up Aymeric Laporte from Man City as a centre half. So he obviously held kind of Basque nationality, so he's declared for Spain after many years, and I'm kind of surprised he's not playing for France in the first place. The Spanish midfield, as ever, is very strong with some names recognised, such as Sergio Busquets and Koke, but also kind of players like Pedri from Barcelona, who's going to be a huge star in the coming years. The attack is a bit unusual. Like Adama Traore of Wolves isn't a very typical Spanish player, but we still think he could be very exciting. I think Luis Enrique himself, the coach, is a positive for Spain. Enrique himself has a great track record with Barcelona. He played for both as a player. He played for both of the Real and Barcelona. So he carries a certain respect within Spain. The fact as well is he's returned from awful personal tragedy in 2019 where his daughter died at a very young age to kind of come back and manage the Spanish team. So he took a couple of months leave. He's kind of come back at this. He's come back into the Spanish fold, and you can see that he's really passionate about this team. I think if he thought this was going to be a no hoper, he would have kind of taken the back seat and resigned from the role. But I think it's a strong positive that Enrique's there and just how good a manager he is for these big tournaments.
All right, thanks for that, Steve. Just so, because we're running a little bit over time now, just take us briefly through, I think you'll lead through the last two ones because we obviously got the second half of the panel and we don't want to cut everyone too short.
Yeah. Do you want to go next, Lee? Or?
Yes, so very, very briefly on Portugal. So Portugal are 8-1 shots. They're obviously in the very tough Group F. Portugal are the reigning European champions, and they won the Nations League tournament in 2019. Ronaldo being their star man, but we also think they've got a good squad backed up with Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, and Ruben Diaz, who was very impressive for Manchester City in the Premier League this season. Yeah.
We're not even close up Italy. Italy are a big favourite of mine. They've gone 10 for 10 in qualifying. Mancini again, a proven manager. Great midfield depth. Verratti is a slight injury date, but they have good cover if he doesn't play. They play all their games at home. I thought the concern for Italy is maybe finding that goal scorer in the big tournament. So they may be one of their attackers to have the tournament of his career during this event. The Italians are better than most at doing this. Those who have memories can remember Paolo Rossi in '82 and Toto Schillaci in 1990, where strikers kind of emerge from nowhere to take over the tournament. If there is one of those,
I was going to say, well, just because we're running a little bit out of time, what would you think about the Netherlands then, Lee, and then the last couple?
Yes, so the Netherlands, obviously a reputation for producing great players, and we think the group that took Ajax far in the Champions League a couple of years ago is a good core of players. They're missing Virgil van Dijk. But we think their group looks easy, and we think they could do well if Memphis Depay scores the goals for them.
And I think just the last two, I know Stephen tagged Denmark as an outside bet, and yourself was Croatia, Lee. I think that was right.
Correct. I think in summary, Denmark have a very strong first 11, who I would be a terrible team for anyone to meet at the later stages. So Denmark could be very interesting, and if we are to see a big upset, Denmark could be that one for me.
And you think the Croats, Lee, still got something to offer?
Yes, I think Croatia are a very interesting price at 28-1. It's not often that you can back the beaten World Cup finalists from the previous tournament at such a big price. So that's the simple case for Croatia from me.
All right. Thank you very much, Lee and Stephen. That was really, really helpful. There's a lot of informative stuff there that I'm sure many of us didn't know. We're going to move on to we haven't got any questions yet, but if anyone wants to ask any questions of Lee and Stephen, we can put those at the end of the second panel. Now we're going to move on to the second panel now, which is a roundtable discussion. We've got two representatives from La Liga here, Jose Ignacio Albert Sarasa and Carlos Alberto Romero Oviedo, who are both going to have some input from La Liga. Jake Marsh, who's the Global Head of Integrity at Stats Perform. Christina Thakur-Rankin, the former trader and co-founder of the All In Diversity Project. And Mr. Frankowski is going to have some input as well. So just to kick that off, as I know we're overrunning a bit, Jake, I'd maybe start with you, if you don't mind. I had a question for you, how you thought innovation and new technology and analysis helps improve sports betting integrity and the fight against match fixing.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. For those new to Stats Perform, at its heart, we're a business that's a data and technology business. And we work to apply the latest innovations to drive fan engagement and ultimately the value of our sports partners and clients. We apply technology innovation across all our products, across all our commercial products, as well as our various integrity operations. And for those new to the sport integrity world, this is namely at its core betting markets monitoring, intelligence operations, and now also performance analysis. When we talk about innovation and technology, I think nowadays, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, of course. I think it's not always mentioned that the betting industry have been applying machine learning for a long time now. This is nothing new to them. And it's the same for us at Stats Perform. We invest heavily in these areas. And we take advantage of this through leveraging deep data sets and developing new metrics to help risk analysis and the investigation of individual matches and competitions. as a business, we sit at the cross section between the betting and sport industries. So our work in integrity is primarily or partly, to help close this loop, and using our own in-house innovations to help protect sports and betting. Aside from what we do in betting monitoring, which obviously leverages our deep data and machine learning, a major development for us in the last 18 months has been our development of performance integrity analysis. This involves extensive data analysis and new metrics to take a more forensic look at individual matches and competitions, to take a deeper dive on what's happened on the field of play. You saw our XG metric, kindly mentioned by Lee and Stephen in their presentation. This is just one of many metrics that have been developed by our business over the past few years, that we apply to the analysis of matches to try and identify potentially suspicious activity. This has given us a new pillar in the detection and investigation of match fixing, and is being used more and more widely by rights holders and sports governing bodies, such as La Liga, obviously, who we have on the call, and also in other sports, such as cricket, where we're also starting to apply these methodologies. But I think it's important, without going on too much of a sales pitch of our hopefully that wasn't of our work in this area. Innovation isn't just about technology and machine learning and AI. It's also about new ways of thinking, policy, process, and responsibilities. And there's been some great examples of this, in the past few years. One of which has been the RBAA's own development of the sports betting data standards, which we've been involved in from the early stages. And this called for a set of minimum best practice standards for companies supplying data to the betting industries, such as ourselves. And the RBAA have really taken up the mantle on this front, which we believe is incredibly important. And these standards bring together critical requirements for businesses that are collecting and distributing data to the betting industry, and allows them to demonstrate through independent audit that they are ensuring the quality and integrity of the data that is being supplied to the market. And overall, this has another beneficial effect on the integrity of the market itself. So I just wanted to say, overall, while we do focus on data, on innovation in technology and software, I think we also need to consider things on the other side in terms of how organisations actually approach the integrity of sport and work together to do this.
Oh, thanks, Jake. That was very helpful. Now, I know StatsForm does some work with La Liga, so maybe we can ask a question of Carlos and Jose, if that was okay, please. And be interested to know how La Liga uses new technologies in data and monitoring to improve integrity in its performance.
Hi, Steve. The first of all, in the name of La Liga, thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this interesting day. I think these days are essential to fight against sport match fixing and take the collaboration and cooperation as a basic pillar to our success. In this content, to introduce it, I need to say that La Liga's Global Integrity Program consists of 4 fundamental pillars. The first pillar is the prevention. I think it's the first step in protection. The second pillar is the monitoring and alarms. The third is investigation and reporting. And the 4th pillar is the national and international programs expansion. We have implemented in the part of monitoring and alarm a new software called Taike 3.0 through the artificial intelligence and machine learning. We monitor all the matches of La Liga and the other competitions in Spain. Is in real time, and we control the odds of the main betting markets in the world in effective, efficient, and objective way. We are detecting any alteration of these markers in pre-match and also in live. it's becoming increasingly important to have the latest technology to be able to react and act quickly against criminals. At the same time, with new technology, we are following football players' activity and traceability by social media. I think this is a very important thing as well. In summary, La Liga has reported a total of 15 football matches in this season, all of them from Spanish no professional football. From the moment the police take charge of this investigation. Now my colleague Carlos are going to explain our software a little more rapidly.
Hi everyone. As Iñaki said, I'm going to explain how our software Taike works. First of all, Taike 3.0 is a software based in the use of machine learning. We have our own predictive models about how the odds have to behave. We have calculated this model with all the historic data from all the teams that take part in our competitions, professionals and non-professional. In Taike, we have 3 dashboards. The principal one is called match details, and here we can see and select every match, every date of any of the Spanish competitions that appears in the betting markets. In bets part, we can see the victory, draw, and lose market, the goals market, and also the Asian handicap. We can compare our probability of our models with the things that are occurring in real time in the matches. All of this occurs also in the pre-match and in play market. And we can see in a graphical way or in a graphical view, sorry. And also we have the numeric probabilities, and this differs so much with our models, we generate an alarm. The other 2 dashboards, there are alert detail, alert resume, and alert detail, that is a dashboard that summarize what match details told us. Also, as Jake said before, we have the data provided by StatPerform, and we use it to solve any doubts about some players' performance on the field. Related to our field action, we have also the figure of the integrity officers that are in the stadium sending by La Liga, trying to avoid the dangerous behavior between the players. And
right.
it's all.
Thank you very much. One thing I think like all technology that we use, it has to be set up by a human, doesn't it? Really. And and one thing I wanted to ask Christina was, who sets up that technology? If it's a man, is there a risk of biased technology? I guess, and what's the impact of that for integrity in sports betting, Christina?
That's a very interesting question, Steve. Firstly, thank you for having me. And I would say, actually, the answer to that particular question is there's always a risk of bias. And it's for the very reasons yourself, Jake, Jose, and Carlos articulated. And it doesn't matter whether it's a man or not. All human beings are inherently biased. So that's your starting point. And this technology is built by people with biases, different degrees of bias. It could be gender bias, or it could be some other form of bias. Secondly, and I think has been articulated beautifully by the gentleman before me, a lot of the programming and a lot of the kind of attributes to match fixing and spot fixing are based upon historic events. It's what we know to be proven match fixing or spot fixing, which we then advise our programmers to build into the technology. And the machine learning is such that it will continue learning based on the original programming. And of course, this technology is for sale. Jake and his business are selling this technology to any number of buyers. Some of those buyers would, if you're an intelligent match fixer, be a match fixer. Look at what the bookies and the operators are using to catch you, and then you change your tactics, knowing the technology is going to take a bit of time to catch up. The one thing technology cannot program for is a couple of things which have been mentioned by Stephen Lee, and that's the unknowns. Yeah, how do England perform under pressure? Well, we know the moment you mention penalties to them, it all goes to pieces. And we've got the men's World Cup coming up, and it's going to be played in 40-degree heat. We don't know how that is going to have an impact on players' abilities. And it's going to be very, very easy to use something like that, natural events, which are not programmable, to get a few little bits of match fixing in there. And then it all kind of goes back right at the end to humans. You can have the best technology in the world, but actually it's going to be humans using that technology and humans then making a judgment call based upon what that technology tells them. And those of you who are old enough to remember South African cricket at its height, a gentleman called Hansie Cronje. He'd been involved in fixing for a period of time, but nobody suspected him because of the personality he was. So you've got to take all of these factors into consideration, and whether it's the men's game or even more higher risk, the women's game, which we have even less experience of. Yes, there is going to be bias. It already exists with technology in the men's game. It's going to be existing in the women's game to an even greater degree.
Oh, thank you very much, Tina. So just, I guess, moving back to Jake, in response to that bit, I just wonder what you thought, Jake, about how sports themselves view the use of new technologies and approaches to betting integrity, in the fight against match fixing.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Tina. Tina raises, some interesting points. And when it comes to monitoring, detection, and investigation, those are exactly the sorts of points in terms of being aware of potential biases that we constantly have to remind ourselves of to make sure that any analysis and any investigation is as neutral as possible. Our experience with sports, particularly in the last 5 years, has been a very positive one. Sports governing bodies and rights holders, are keen to listen to new ideas and to look at different ways of protecting their sports against fixing. And that often, let's be honest, often comes down to the protection of their reputation and ultimately the protection of their finances. If fixing gets to a level where rights holders having sponsors pull out, or the reputation of the sport is just dire, then that's going to ultimately affect what the success of what is actually a business. And Tina's quite right. Those corrupting sport are always adapting in terms of how they're going to target, who they're going to target, how they're going to do it, how they're going to transfer money, how they're going to communicate with each other. So we're often speaking with rights holders about these very issues and helping them to find new ways to plug the gaps in analysis and evidence. This might be because they're trying to evade betting monitoring systems. There have been plenty of matches that intelligence has strongly suggested that there is a fix taking place, but there hasn't been a spike in the betting markets. These things are happening, and it's working with sports to try and find other ways of identifying issues, identifying trends in match fixers, modus operandi, trends in the betting, and new ways to detect suspicious activity, whether that's through things like we've developed, through performance integrity analysis. And we're always looking to work with these organisations that are progressive, forward thinking in terms of how they're looking to protect their competitions and root out corruption. La Liga, a really good example of this. We've started working with La Liga 4 years ago, and at that time, and I think I could be wrong, and if anyone's out there can correct me on this, please shout, but they were the first sports governing body to develop their own betting markets monitoring system in-house. And even though that's what we provide as well, they said to us, well, we're doing this already, but we still want to work with you. We want to collaborate with you. We want to have a second pair of eyes on every match. If we've got concerns and our analysts think, you know, there's this problem with this match, we want to be able to get on the phone to you and talk about it and discuss it. And it's been a really good, you know, collaboration over the last few years, and shows how organisations in this space, you know, should be working together. But there's plenty of other, you know, organisations out there in tennis, in cricket, that are open to new ideas that might aid them and their own integrity units in their work. We've got a couple of projects that are underway, and one soon to be underway, that are industry first in terms of how sports look at the performance of teams and players alongside betting analysis and intelligence. As I said earlier, to close that loop in terms of the analytics and the metrics that are used to identify potential match fixing. And lastly, if I may, I think I've mentioned performance analysis a little bit on this panel. So I'll finish on another mention of it. Our work in performance analysis, when it comes to investigating and detecting match fixing, was born out of a close collaboration with a major governing body. They had some matches that they were concerned about. They didn't have the required betting alerts and data on these matches, and they just came to us and said, look, is there another way we can start looking at these matches? And we said, right, okay, we'll start looking at the performance data. We'll start looking at matches across the whole season when it comes to these teams. And so we've been able to develop our methodology and refine it continually over the last couple of years through close cooperation. And we really believe in that. You know, it's not that one company or organization owns the right approach to integrity. You know, there's advice, you know, people on this call are experts and very passionate about what they do. And we should all be working together to generate ideas because it's all in all our interests to protect the integrity of sport.
All right. Well, just very briefly then, because I don't want to overrun. We've got a couple more questions to go. I just wonder what Carlos and Jose thought from the Liga's point of view about where cooperation sat in the development of new technologies. Carlos? No? Jose? Yeah, thank you.
Of course,
I think the sound's off.
Excuse me. Of course, I think the development of technology is a fundamental pillar in the fight against match fixing. For my experience as a police officer, organized groups have the most sophisticated tools to carry out their action, and more in new technology. That is a reason why we need to update about these tools. We have to be able to anticipate the movements and react against them effectively. In addition to that, I think that the continuous and agile collaboration with other public and private institutions is also very, very important.
All right, and just to wrap up there, I guess a final question for Christina, what you thought about the increased profile of women's sport, notably football and cricket, will be in terms of match fixing?
Well, I'll be brief. Women's sport is growing faster than men's sport. The early predictions are the Women's World Cup in 2023 is going to be the most watched World Cup ever. And we know where there's spectators, there are betting markets. Where there are bettors, there are match fixings. If I'm a match fixer, why would I waste my time on the men's game when I know people are watching it? When I can go into the women's game, already the English FA has raised concerns about match fixing in the women's game. You look at cricket and you look at the Indian women's cricket team, which is the highest paid team in the world. They have already reported approaches from match fixers and spot fixers. I'm a match fixer. I'm going to go into that market knowing full well all of the technology is based upon male players, the men's game. And also add in the fact that your trading teams are going to be slightly inherently biased. When a woman fumbles it, how many of them are going to sit there and go, women can't catch? Are they going to see the same action that a female player enacts and add their bias in there and say, girls can't run, they can't throw? Match fixers are already targeting the women's game, and there is a perception women are going to be more vulnerable to it than men. They will earn less in the professional game, which is exactly one of the reasons match fixing was prevalent in the male game. There is a perception that they are more vulnerable because they are women, they are mothers, and therefore easier to exploit. So in terms of addressing it, every trading team should start to look at the women's game as seriously and with the same kind of traits and analytical detail as the men's game.
Thanks for that, Tina.
And they should bring in ex-players to help them.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. That's very good. And Mrs. Frankowski, I have one final question for you, which I guess in light of what all the panelists have said, what you thought are the policies that can support innovation in the fight against match fixing?
Yes, in the European Parliament, we have several tools in order to address this issue. As you probably aware, I am in charge of the new report in my committee of the future of the European sport policy. For sure, sport and innovation and, of course, the fight against match fixing would be addressed in my report. I would already invite you to contact me and my office on this issue. All ideas and recommendations from your side will be more than welcome. Additionally, another great news is that we have bigger budget for sport under the new Erasmus Plus program for 21-27. And hopefully we will be able not only to promote the exchange of good practices and experiences of sport innovation among member states, but also finance the project in this area. We cannot forget, of course, the mobility of researchers at local, regional, national, European, and global level, who will have a crucial role to play in this field. What is more, we need to identify synergies between the relevant and already existing financial instruments and programs such as Erasmus+, Life, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, and EU for Health. We have at our disposal also the cohesion policy funds or all the EU recovery initiatives such as the Recovery and Resilience. The sports movement and the other relevant organizations can benefit from these funds. That is why I'm very happy that in this context, sport and innovation have been prioritized in the conclusion of the Portuguese presidency of the Council. It confirms that importance of best practices of sport innovation in the EU context. We need to support the mapping of sport innovation and to explore innovative solutions, including digital and technological innovations, in order to protect the integrity and combat corruption in sport. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frankowski, for that. We've had two or three questions. Probably only really got time for one. This is from Philippe Boss. And he said that the gentleman from La Liga have said that the games that have been picked up in betting integrity alerts were amateur games. So he said, hence, why continue offering betting services on amateur matches and not exclusively focus on top sporting events? Maybe we can have an answer from one person on that. I don't know who wants to take that up, Jose and Carlos or Jake or whoever. Does anyone want to?
I don't mind, Steve. I don't mind. Happy to Steve. I think from an operator perspective, I'm conscious I might be seen as having my commercial hat on here, but I think, look, there is a higher risk both in lower levels of sport than higher level sport, just given the fact that these are sometimes amateur events. Operators will take a look at events offered, and they will like responsible operators will look at events and will kind of beforehand evaluation. Look, is this event too risky to be offered, and is there a real integrity concern? And they would decide not to offer it. But the fact is, even amateur matches, we do have in countries such as Spain, we're kind of typically happier. The proportion of events that are kind of found to be potentially manipulated are still very low. Like we're still talking kind of less than 1% of events are kind of just of amateur events are under suspicion of match fixing. So it is higher than top level football, but that wouldn't mean that it's hugely high. I sometimes I think it can be a difficult question to answer, and I think maybe operators and kind of leagues need to find the right balance, but like there is obviously a risk there. But I think it's not as high as maybe some would think it is.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Stephen. So I'd like to just to close off, thank you very much for everyone's participation in the panel and all sections of it, part 1 and 2. And we've got Mr. Tarabella is going to round off with a few closing remarks.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends. I think that maybe 3 or 4 remarks. The first one is that innovation and the technology are playing a key role in supporting the fight against match fixing. And can recall the council conclusions, as mentioned my excellent colleague Bas Frankowski a few minutes ago, the conclusion of the council from the Portuguese presidency on sport innovation. From the best practices, we have heard today from, example, La Liga Stats perform, stakeholders involved in the fight against match fixing, including sports betting operators, and data providers are investing considerable amount of money for the development and improvement of technology to keep up against criminals who want to defraud sports. But also a warning when it comes to the development of the new technologies to make sure that these are taking into account the gender equality factor and that are not biased. This is true for the development of new technologies also in other sectors. And despite the relevance of innovation in the fight against match fixing, it is important to underline that there is one element without which this fight would be lost, and this is cooperation. The willing to cooperate still remains key when it comes to fight match fixing. And my last word, because I was not at the beginning of the meeting, the preparation meeting, I'm pleased to see the Diable Rouge of Belgium, because the Red Devils is Manchester United for the clubs, but for the national team is Belgium. I hope that they will perform in this Euro 2020, because Belgium, despite the fact that we are the first in the ranking of the FIFA for a couple of years, never we won an international competition. Maybe 2021 will be the occasion to win. But good luck for all of you, and we wish a very good competition. And I remind in the preparatory meeting that the championships everywhere in Europe, it's a good thing. And I think that we have to have a thought to Michel Platini. Of course, he has to leave the world of football, but it was his idea, and I would like to remind that. He was a big champion of football and a sport leader, but it was his idea. We have to remind that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much everyone else for all their attendance and participation today. Have a good rest of the day.
Just one last remark from the side of U40. So on behalf of the Network of Young MEPs, I just want to say a big thank you to the IBIA, the EGBA, the All in Diversity Project, and of course the B Sports Group, and of course all the invited speakers for the insightful conversation. I have to say, especially for me, it was very insightful because I'm not as informed with the book campaign and the betting procedure. But I do want to thank everybody for attending, especially for all the attendees who registered for the event today. And we're still going to be on YouTube in case there's any kind of points that you want to go back to. So just a big thank you to everybody for a successful event.